In the heart of West Africa, a quiet revolution is stirring. At its center stands a young soldier carrying the spirit of Thomas Sankara and a vision that challenges global power structures. His name,
Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
He didn't rise through elections or foreign endorsements. He seized power through a coup, not the kind backed by IMF loans or photo ops in Paris. In just months, he achieved what few African leaders dared attempt: expelling the French military, tearing up colonial-era agreements, severing ties with Western financiers, and calling out decades of neocolonialism masked as freedom. To his supporters, he is the reincarnation of Thomas Sankara. To his critics, a dangerous figure wielding a pan-African agenda. But one thing is clear: Ibrahim Traoré isn't just reshaping Burkina Faso, he's challenging the global order and igniting a new wave of African defiance across the Sahel and beyond. His name is chanted by the bold and feared by the powerful. But who is Ibrahim Traoré? What does he want? And why is the West scrambling to contain him? To understand Traoré, you must understand the land he comes from, a nation that has buried more revolutions than perhaps any other on the continent. Burkina Faso, formerly Upper Volta, was renamed by Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who led the country in the 1980s. Burkina Faso means land of upright people. But after Sankara's assassination in 1987, a killing laced with foreign complicity, the nation lost that uprightness. Over the past decade, Burkina Faso has endured 5 heads of state, numerous coups, and widespread insecurity. Despite millions in Western security aid, entire regions fell to jihadist insurgents. It was amid this chaos that Captain Ibrahim Traoré emerged. Trained at the University of Ouagadougou and seasoned as an artillery officer, he served in the volatile northern Sahel, where terrorism was rampant and state protection was absent. Unlike many in the officer class, Traoré asked hard questions. Why was Burkina Faso losing territory despite billions in aid? Why were French troops stationed in the country as violence increased? Why were foreign companies exploiting the nation's mines while citizens lacked basic services? No sacrifice will be too great to lift this country out of its current situation, he declared.
No sacrifice will be too great to take this country out of the situation in which it finds itself. So, our commitment is for a return to peace, and our compass will always be the people.
This wasn't just a military takeover, it was a declaration of disobedience. Traoré reframed his coup as a correction of the previous military regime, led by Paul-Henri Damiba, accused of being too cozy with France and too reluctant to sever old ties. With no political background or elite backers, Traoré drew upon something deeper: Burkinabe patriotism and the revolutionary spirit of Sankara. He echoed Sankara's speeches, revived national narratives, and called on youth to rise, not with weapons, but with tools, creativity, and hope. But it wasn't just hope that made the West nervous. It was what came next. Since gaining independence in 1960, Burkina Faso has experienced more coups than any other African country, 9 successful ones, along with many failed attempts. In 1966, Colonel Sangoulé Lamezana overthrew President Maurice Yameogo. France remained diplomatically close. No sanctions, no outrage. In 1980, Colonel Saye Zerbo toppled Lamezana. In 1982, Major Dr. Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo took over. Then, in 1983, Captain Thomas Sankara, just 33 years old, led a revolutionary coup. He slashed government waste, promoted local industries, and launched campaigns against corruption and foreign control. But in 1987, Sankara was assassinated by Blaise Compaoré, his former ally, in a France-backed coup. For nearly 3 decades, Traoré ruled with Western support, privatizing state industries and turning Burkina Faso into a semi-sovereign state, independent in name, guided by foreign interests. Born in 1988, a year after Sankara's death, Ibrahim Traoré grew up under Compaoré's rule. But unlike others who fled or fell silent, Traoré chose to serve. What shaped Traoré wasn't just military training, but his experience in the war-torn Sahel. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has faced an insurgency led by Al-Qaeda and ISIS-linked groups. Traoré was stationed in areas like Loroum, Yatenga, and Somme, where government authority had collapsed. French troops stationed under Operation Barkhane rarely intervened to protect civilians. Traoré, like Sankara before him, began to view the war on terror as a cover for neo-colonial extraction. He questioned why missions were underfunded, despite years of foreign military aid. Why was intelligence on terrorists delayed or missing? Why French forces seemed more focused on guarding mining corridors than on protecting lives? By 2022, under Damiba's transitional government, Traoré had grown disillusioned. Damiba had promised change, but refused to sever ties with France. The suffering worsened. So, in September 2022, Traoré led loyalist units to the capital, not just to depose Damiba, but to challenge the system itself. A 35-year-old unknown had just ousted a French-aligned general and declared that Burkina Faso would reclaim its destiny. Since then, Traoré has openly embraced Sankara's legacy, reigniting Pan-African pride and anti-colonial sentiment. In the colonial playbook, there's an unwritten rule: rebel, but only within the lines. Traoré didn't just step outside the lines, he tore the entire page. Within 4 months of taking power, he expelled the French military and ended Operation Sabre. He canceled a 1961 agreement allowing French troops to intervene in Burkina Faso's affairs, a relic of colonial cooperation. He didn't stop there. Traoré suspended French state media like RFI and France 24, accusing them of spreading disinformation. He banned French NGOs, claiming they were intelligence fronts disguised as development organizations. Burkina Faso produces over 70 tons of gold annually, yet over 90% is controlled by foreign firms. Traoré's administration began auditing mining contracts and exposing the gold drain, enriching Europe while impoverishing Burkina Faso. As Traoré asserted his independence, a new war emerged in the press. Western media labeled him a junta leader, a militant captain, a Putin proxy. What they often failed to mention: Traoré rose after Western-backed governments lost all public trust. Rather than ask why he came to power, they painted him as just another African strongman. After suspending French media, the Western press expressed outrage.
Aucun d'entre eux ne serait aujourd'hui avec un pays souverain si l'armée française ne s'était pas déployée dans cette région. Nous avions une relation sécuritaire. Elle était de deux natures en vérité. Il y a une partie, c'était notre engagement contre le terrorisme depuis 2013. On avait raison. Je crois qu'on a oublié de nous dire merci. C'est pas grave, ça viendra avec le temps. L'ingratitude, je suis bien placé pour le savoir, c'est une maladie non transmissible à l'homme. Et je le dis pour tous les gouvernants africains qui n'ont pas eu le courage vis-à-vis de leurs opinions publiques de le porter, aucun d'entre eux ne serait aujourd'hui avec un pays souverain si l'armée française ne s'était pas déployée dans cette région. Et j'ai une pensée émue pour nos soldats qui, parfois, ont donné leur vie et pendant des années se sont battus. Nous avons bien fait. On est parti parce qu'il y a eu des coups d'État, parce qu'on était là à la demande d'États souverains qui avaient demandé à la France de venir.
But in Burkina Faso, where trust can mean survival, information is not neutral, it's tactical. The government adopted a zero-tolerance policy toward biased reporting. When Human Rights Watch accused Burkinabe troops of massacres in 2024, the government suspended outlets like the BBC, VOA, and even Human Rights Watch itself. They blocked several other platforms accused of undermining the armed forces, framing it as a fight for narrative sovereignty. Despite the media storm, Traoré's local support has only grown. Citizens see him as a shield against foreign manipulation and internal chaos. Even Western think tanks like the Atlantic Council and Brookings Institution joined in, publishing warnings about autocracy and instability. But many of these same institutions are funded by defense contractors and governments with interests in Sahel geopolitics. Control of information shapes perception. Perception shapes policy. If Traoré is seen as a liberator, he wins global sympathy. If seen as rogue, he becomes an excuse for sanctions, or worse. What truly threatens the West is Traoré's vision: a self-reliant Burkina Faso and a sovereign Africa. His policies reflect Sankara's ideals: self-sufficiency, food security, and military independence. For decades, the West prospered from African dependency. Traoré threatens that model. In December 2023, rumors swirled of an assassination attempt against Traoré. U.S. satellite surveillance over Ouagadougou increased. Burkina Faso's elite guard doubled in size, from 800 to over 2,500 in 6 months. A senior officer reportedly told a journalist, "We are not naive. We remember what happened to Sankara." Tensions escalated again when a U.S. general accused Traoré of diverting gold reserves for personal security.
But Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
The government dismissed the claims as imperial propaganda, releasing a public audit in response.
He talked about Burkina's gold being used for what? For us, to protect ourselves and all that. First, it's Burkina's gold, it's not his gold. That's the first thing. What business is it of his? It's none of his business. It's Burkina's gold. It doesn't concern him. Second thing, he's lying. Because Burkina never had any gold reserves until we came.
2 years earlier, Burkina Faso had been suspended from ECOWAS alongside Mali and Niger, part of a broader attempt to restore democratic order. In response, the 3 countries formed a new alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, focused on mutual defense, self-determination, and ending foreign military presence. Western powers labeled them pariahs, but surveys show strong local support for deeper regional integration and independence. Over 50,000 civilians volunteered to join the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, VDP, as confirmed by the Ministry of Territorial Administration. What happens when a young African leader doesn't beg for aid, doesn't fear headlines, and doesn't wait for permission? You get Ibrahim Traoré, and you get a new kind of Africa, one that's no longer waiting to be saved, but rising to be sovereign. The question is, can the West tolerate an Africa that thinks for itself, governs itself, and defines itself? Stay curious, and as always, I'll see you next time.